Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. So today we have in our studio the special guest Jayant Krishna, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Director at the National Skills Development Corporation, which was set up some years ago to enhance skills in the economy. We have a 500 million workforce, and economists say that less than 5% of this 500 million is really skilled, and nearly 50% of this workforce hasn't gone beyond primary education. So this is a serious crisis which policy is trying to address, which the governments, state governments, even industry is participating in this process. So National Skills Development Corporation is a public-private initiative which is trying to sort of look at this whole problem in a comprehensive way. So welcome to our studio, Jayant. So please tell us, what kind of restructuring of the skills development program are we seeing in the context of the deepening problem of unemployment and growth? So today we have a situation where demand is decelerated, and especially in the context of demonetization in the short to medium term even more. And supply has always been a problem, as economists have indicated, skill supply as in. So how do you imagine solutions to this problem, say, over the next 5 years? You have a target of skilling 400 million by 2022, right?
That's right.
So give us a roadmap.
Yeah, see, the fact is that jobs are getting created, new jobs are still happening. The rate of increase in new jobs has gone down. But the new jobs are happening. But let's understand the kind of economy that we are a part of. 8 or 9 out of every new 10 jobs that are created, they are not in the corporate sector, they are not in the government, they are in the informal sector and unorganized sector. So many of these jobs,
which has been hit more by demonetization.
That's what some experts say. But whole issue is these jobs are not as aspirational, they are not as well paying. Some of these jobs may not even adhere to the minimum wages prescribed by different states. So I think this is one issue. And let's also understand the global landscape. The newer generation investments which are coming in the manufacturing space, they are so technology intensive, they are so capital intensive, but they are not job intensive. I have been to a Mercedes factory in Germany and another cigarette, British American tobacco factory in UK. And in the entire shop floor, you won't find people at all. So for the new investments which are happening in the manufacturing space, jobs are not happening.
So these technologies are coming to India also, and I have heard industry experts suggesting that growing automation will actually render 20-30 million more people jobless in the 4-5 years to come. Is that your understanding also?
See, my understanding is that there will not be any big hit on numbers, but the kind of skills that we'll require would differ. For example, let's take it auto itself. Auto sector, which is a very, very large manufacturing sector. The focus will shift to electrical vehicles, to biofuel vehicles, kind of a thing. If you look at the construction, a lot of movement will happen towards green construction. Similarly, energy, from thermal plants, a lot of focus will shift to the non-conventional sources of energy. Look at information technology, which is a very, very big sector. The newer shift is towards digital technologies, where cloud computing, mobility computing, social media.
How do you cope with these changes? How do you plan?
So basically, in our system, we have to have newer standards, newer qualification packs and job roles for which the training has to be started. If you go back to manufacturing, you look at robotics, look at 3D printing, which may not have become a big reality, but I'm sure days are not far when that will be used big time beyond prototyping and in actual manufacturing. So I think a lot of artificial intelligence is being used big time. So we have to look at not only the skill space, but also the higher education space, that how do we transition towards...
But tell me, Jayant, it's interesting you're saying this. So let me understand. If 50% of our workforce of 500 million, 50% would mean 250 million, right? If they have not gone beyond primary education, so what would be your focus in skills development?
I think this figure is a bit distorted. I'll tell you why. Because it includes agriculture farm laborers also, which is a huge number. So if you remove that, then it's not that bulk of those people have not undergone primary education. In fact, they have undergone primary and secondary, a very large percentage of it. But the issue is different. These people have a very small, as you said yourself, you said 5%, but anywhere between 3 to 4% is the estimate. Lower than that, people who are formally skilled in a classroom and lab situation, as against China, where more than 50% of a bigger workforce is formally skilled.
So you're saying 95% of our, or 96% of our workforce is not formally skilled. So this is your challenge. How to skill the 94%, right?
That's right. So they're not formally skilled, but if you look at the reality, they have learned skills on the job. As they have been working, they have acquired skills. It may not be in a formal environment, but actually in a working environment. So we have a program called Recognition of Prior Learning, which is very, very important. You may not have a skilling certificate or a diploma, but you have acquired skills. So, we go there for example, to silk weavers in Varanasi, or chicken curry workers in Lucknow, or in Moradabad, the brassware people, in Kutch region, in Gujarat, a whole lot of handicraft and these kind of handloom people. We look at what skills they have, do a quick assessment, find the gaps, and give a short dose of incremental training. And then another assessment happens.
This you've been doing this?
This we started last year, but this year we are going for it big time. So I think
and the funding for this comes from the government, largely from the government.
Largely from government of India, through the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship.
I read on your website. I read one piece of data which said so far you have skilled about 5 million people. Or is that number right? Or
see last NSDC ecosystem since inception, we have skilled about 1 crore people. NSDC itself. But if you look at
that's 10 million people.
That's 10 million people, little over 10 million people. And if you look at the overall Skill India mission, last year we skilled almost 1.04 crore people, which was a 36% increase over last year. But the country is still not able to capture all skilling. Like private sector does big time skilling. In the entire IT industry, where 10% of the GDP comes from, a very large number of workforce come from. There is no system of collating that data. So, while the government controlled skilling data looks short, but if you couple it with what's happening in the private sector, it becomes many-fold.
I understand that because Infosys hires engineers from second level engineering colleges, not the top notch, one notch below. And I think they reskill them in their own institute in Bangalore, in Mysore.
Absolutely. So TCS, Cognizant, Infosys, that's what they do. So, it's not that they are not recruiting from top edge colleges, but generally recruitment in those colleges goes to the R&D setup that they have and product development setup that they have. And you're right, absolutely. Anywhere between 2 months to 6 months of classroom captive training and lab training happens to those people.
That is the higher end. I'm more worried about, say, construction workers, because construction provides the maximum employment as per existing data. You would agree with that, right?
That's right. It has the highest amount of skill gaps also.
It has the highest amount of skill gap.
That's right.
So is there a special focus on construction in government programs such as Ministry of National Skills Development and Entrepreneurship?
That's right.
And Livelihood Mission, etc.?
That's right. So we have a Sector Skill Council for construction. And as you would have heard in the budget speech this year, there's a focus to have 5 lakh masons by the year 2022.
Yeah, and 500,000 masons.
Yeah, so I think it's a huge focus because construction is the largest skill gap area. Roads, infrastructure, housing, commercial spaces, everywhere. And
so you study the construction sector employment closely, is that?
We have studied not only construction but the top 24-25 sectors of the economy. And we have skill gaps for them till the year 2022.
These are employment intensive
That's
segments.
Right. Sectors.
Can you name some others besides construction?
They're logistics, retail, telecom, whole lot of agriculture itself. Agriculture may not need new labor, but a lot of upskilling requirement happens.
In the extension services, etc.
In extension services, because if you look at agriculture has been growing in the past decade or so at an average rate of almost 2%. This year was an exception, then we grew at about 4% kind of thing. The capital productivity of agriculture is so poor. In China and Brazil, it produces almost 2 times per hectare of wheat and rice than what our country produces, So how do we go to that level unless skill comes, unless technology comes? That's very important.
So that would require a proper analysis of how agriculture works in this country, because recent trends indicate, I've read this and I've seen it also when I've been to rural India, that people are aggregating their land because a lot of their family members have moved to cities, providing various services, says driving, taxis, etc. So they are aggregating, villages are aggregating the land and getting services from outside for sowing, for harvest, etc. So big harvesters. So is that one area where you could sort of teach people mechanization, skill people in mechanization of agriculture?
So if you look
and they provide services to vast number of villages,
See, this is like a writing on the wall. It has to happen. Today, if you look at almost 49 to 50% of our population is dependent on agriculture and allied areas. And what does it contribute? Just 17% of the economy. I'm not trying to belittle the importance of agriculture, but 50% people dependent on this occupation, contributing 17% of the GDP.
That's so a low per capita income trap.
It sucks the per capita income of the entire country down by as much. So people have to move away from agriculture. This has happened in all countries. It has to happen here. So if you look at our agriculture-centric job roles, they are largely into advanced techniques, mechanization, and so on and so forth. And we are also trying to partner with the agriculture extension centers for delivery of these courses.
Since state governments, agriculture is state subject, so how are state governments participating in this? Because your organization actually partners with a lot of other stakeholders, right? So are state governments also actively involved in this?
State governments are involved. So actually, if you look at our flagship scheme, which is Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is the country's single largest scheme, the signature scheme, where it used to be 100% centralized till last year. This year, we have thrown open, to begin with, 25% of it to the state governments, proposals.
How does the scheme work, if you can tell me?
See, basically, as you know, a lot of people in the skill space come from the bottom of the pyramid or the layer next to it. So many of them do not have the capacity to pay for skilling. So this is the country's answer to such people who cannot afford a market-led fee for skill development, So here skilling happens for free. Last year we enrolled close to 20 lakh people, and
in what areas?
All across, in 40 sectors of the economy. Not all 40, but almost 34, 36 sectors of the economy. Everywhere we train through a network of 4,500 training partners we have. Spanning almost.
This operates in how many state governments?
Almost all major states we have. Last year we had reached close to about 550 plus districts. And this year, as you would have seen in the budget, there's another very important announcement that each district of the country will have an iconic and aspirational skill development center called the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendra. And which
is
is
linked to the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana.
Yeah, so they will execute what we have promised them. We have given them loans, at soft loans for the infrastructure to come up, and we are promising them targets up to 3 years that we'll give you to cover your operating cost. We'll give you targets under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Yojana based on the investments you have made and based on the skill gaps in that district.
So I think your organization will fund these skills, right?
We've already started funding,
Okay, you give loans.
Are
they interest-free loans, or
in some difficult areas it could become a low interest-free also. But the average rate of interest is 6%, which is itself is almost half the rate at which you'll get it from market.
Are there enough people who are taking these loans and getting skilled?
There are enough people, so a lot of capacity has been created. But we would like to have more number of bigger corporates to come and take advantage of this. Because whatever you may do.
But tell me, here's where I want some clarity from you. There's a lot of criticism from experts that it's a public-private initiative, this whole skill development program, right? NS, National Skill Development Corporation, also is a public-private initiative in that sense. But so far what we see is all the effort is public-public. There's hardly any private sector commitment in terms of funding, etc. While it's true that private sector on its own may be doing for their own purpose, for their own needs, doing their skilling, etc. Like you said, the IT sector does. But is there a specific private sector commitment to this program, bottom of the pyramid program, where you're trying to skill people to to make them efficient in agriculture services, construction services, etc. Is that happening?
It's happening. I mean, one is that all the funding that we do is actually for profit funding, and largely people are from private sector. So their private sector, if you include everything put together, they have committed funds close to about 450 crore of investment, because they have to put in their own equity. So if that equity in the project cost is to be extrapolated, it becomes almost 450 crore that they have committed.
How much the government's contribution?
See, government's contribution is bigger, is much bigger. But we as a country, we are not able to capture. See, for example, last year what we started leveraging the corporate social responsibility funds. So we got almost 80 to 90 crore of funds from various public sectors and private sector companies.
But 80 to 90 crores from a universe of so many thousands of corporates with huge profits.
So it was just the beginning.
Looks like
it was just the beginning. See, we have lined up.
Seems embarrassing almost.
So we have lined up companies like Tata Strive. Tata Group has the Tata Strive is their CSR wing through which they do skilling. They have become our non-funded partners. Mahindras have become, a lot of HCL has become, Times of India Group has become. So lot of people are partnering with us, and some of them are taking loans, some are not taking loans. But because whatever one may do in a classroom and a lab situation, the training can never be as effective unless corporates throw in big time. Because
so you would want that to happen more.
Absolutely. If you look at a country like Germany, which is supposed to be the de facto skilling standard all over the world, the actual skilling, there are no ITIs in Germany. The private sector, the manufacturing sector, an industry basically, they run 3-year programs. And their campus recruitment happens when the child is in class 10. And after that, for 3 years and 4 days a week, those people soil their hands on the shop floor. And 1 day in a classroom situation. That's what their dual system is, And therefore, we know what Germany is, especially when it comes to manufacturing skills. So I think we have to rope in corporate sector far more. That's very, very important.
Tell me, this really I've never been able to answer this question. I keep asking myself. Indian corporates, Indian captains of industry, they're all the time on television praising these programs and making the right noises. Post-budget, they'll give 9 out of 10 for such great initiatives. But when it comes to putting money where the mouth is, they just don't measure up. They just don't come forward with the real commitment. So what is it that holds Indian corporates back? In really participating in some of these missions.
See, corporates, unfortunately, we don't have data points. Yesterday, I was there in Maruti Udyog's unit. Last Friday, I was in Tata Strive's center in Bombay. A month ago, I was in the TVS training center in Chennai, kind of a thing. Apollo healthcare skill center in Chennai, kind of thing. So they are doing a fabulous job. But what's happening, much of it...
That is their own... in their own context they're doing it.
So largely for their employees.
Why can't they participate in a national mission like
for
this?
The community, for skilling the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's where the entire challenge is, that how do we rope them in to skill the community. Yeah. So I think it's a big challenge. We are all working towards it. We don't have again data, but whatever estimates you have the centrally funded schemes and state funded schemes, almost 80% of the funding in our country is done by federal and state governments. In Germany, it's just the other way around. 80% is done by corporates. But again, this data...
Give me an idea of if all the centers funding and states contribution put together on an annual basis would work out to how much in today? Post this budget, yeah.
I see the data points.
I just want a rough estimate.
My take is, if you look at the state funding, all states put together, Government of India funding, various ministries put together, of course, largest being in the skills ministry itself. And if you include the corporate sector funding,
I keep the corporate sector aside. I just want to understand the total government public funding.
A lot of people say that it will be close to 5,000 to 6,000 crores, kind of a thing. And if you include corporate, then it will more than double actually, kind of a thing. But you don't have very reliable estimates available,
Okay. So now tell me, what is the outcome? You just said that you've skilled about 1 crore 10 million people so far under this scheme.
NSDC itself.
Yeah, the National Skills Development.
Through our partners.
Yeah, through your partner. Now, where are these people do you track where they get employed or what kind of skills they've acquired? Is there some kind of a document that you prepare as to
So all the funding,
the outcome of such efforts?
Yeah, so all the funding that we do for setting up infrastructure, it is mandatory that all people who are trained and who pass, 70% of them get the wage employment or self-employment, and that we do track in the sense we capture the data into our technology backbone. That where are they placed, and under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, we'll even track them up to 3 months. Till the time that we have the capability to track them on a longer period. Idea is to, and there's also a labor market information system, which is run by the National Skill Development Agency. And so the idea is that it becomes an aggregation of all skilled people in the country, and corporates can tap from it anytime that they want. But let's also understand this is an area which country neglected for several decades. The entire seriousness started barely 7, 8, 9 years ago. 10 years ago.
And this organization was formed about 6 years ago under the UPA government, right? The National Skills Development Corporation.
And this
government came in intensive funding as well as
that's right,
created more programs.
And they created the ministry. It intensified the focus on skills. And they branded it very well in the form of a Skill India mission, so that it has the right visibility. We have lined up Sachin Tendulkar as the brand ambassador, one of the most iconic people, who's talking to a carpenter and sharing the commonality between their lives. I think.
And the bottom line is, correct me if I'm wrong, Jayant. Bottom line is that if out of a workforce of 500 million, if only 5% or even less than 5% is actually skilled, and your ambition is to take it to at least 70-80%, or at least China's level, which is 50%, which means to skill another maybe 200 million, 250 million by 3-4 years.
We have a long way to go.
Yeah, long way to go. And therefore, I find your target of 400 million by 2022 seems a bit too ambitious.
Some people do say
well,
that.
It's not bad to have a big ambitious target.
lofty target,
But realistically, how much do you think you'll achieve given the scale up that is going on at the moment?
See, I would not hazard a guess, because we are still in the initial years, and we have to scale up big time.
I think the corporate sector involvement has to go up.
Has to increase, and we as a country also need to capture
at the community level, not in their own ecosystem.
That's right.
So how much do you? So give me a.
I would not really hazard a guess, because we don't know. But if the target has been set up, we all have to gear up to achieve that target or be as close to that as possible. But today we are quite a distance from the target.
Tell me another thing which has always puzzled me is at this stage of development that India is in. It's a bit unusual that we have 50% of our workforce as self-employed, because that also tells you about the nature of technology-driven manufacturing that is going on, because maybe manufacturing sector in the 50s and 60s in the West absorbed many more people into their employment fold. And I don't think some of the Western economies back in the 50s, 1950s, or 1960s had so many people in the workforce as self-employed as India is today. Assuming that India today is at the same stage as some of those economies said 40 years ago. So is it a bit of a sort of distortion that 50%, nearly 50% of workforce, this is what the data says, employment data.
I think it's good and bad.
Self-employed. Now, what kind of self-employment is something we don't know. It's suboptimal, very low quality, suboptimal employment.
So I think it's a good and bad both. The way I look at this problem is, the good part is, we should be happy that the spirit of entrepreneurship is so well developed in the country, kind of a thing. And as our ease of doing business improves, as labor laws become more flexible, I'm sure there'll be more investments in the domestic sector as well as the FDI. And the employment market would look up, and there'll be need for more and more skilled people. We have national missions like Make in India, Digital India, Startup India. If you look at all these missions, Skill India is the common backbone for all of them. Unless we succeed, many of these missions may not.
And how much is success of all these put together dependent on a real recovery of growth?
Yeah, it is. See, if you look at, you can't look at India in isolation from what's happening in the rest of the world.
World growth and India's growth.
That's right. That's right. But if you look at our economy has bounced back and it is growing at a decent rate of
But
GDP
still
growth.
suboptimal. Not, in fact, structurally, last 2-3 years we've seen a little decline, not an increase. We grew at 7.6, 7.7. Now I think latest data shows 7.8% in 15-16.
My worry is
Now at 7%.
So my worry is different. Whatever GDP growth is happening, it has to create a proportionate amount of jobs. So for every incremental
So the quality of GDP is equally important.
is important. So I think how do we make investments in more labor intensive? How do we and embrace technology and gear up our people? I think so that is very, very important, because today every incremental growth in a certain slab of GDP is not getting you as many new
so
jobs as it was happening a decade ago.
That's a big challenge.
That's a big challenge. Even in service sector, I talked about the manufacturing sector. The level of automation is going to, if the kind of BPO, the kind of BPS investments you have in the country in financial services, automation will.
So is the macro policy recognizing this?
I think the powers that be and the thinkers, the think tank and the policy makers, they are fully aware of it. And if you look at not only the skills and entrepreneurship ministry, but all other ministries are working at that.
This thing is being internalized. The changing nature of technology, changing nature of job creating GDP versus non-job creating GDP.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you very much, Jayant, for talking to us on this very critical subject. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.